Hello and welcome to Homewood, Illinois. Today we are going to be riding back up to Chicago on Metra's Electric Corridor, Metra's only electrified line. Homewood Station was built by the Illinois Central Railway in 1923 to serve their Panama Limited and Seminole Limited long-distance trains. The Illinois Central began commuter service to the South Chicago station 3 years after the station opened. 3 more long-distance services were added in the 1960s, and the station was transferred over to Amtrak in 1971. The Illinois Central continued operating commuter trains on the line until 1987, wherein the line was purchased by Metra. The station building itself is a small but quite pretty facility. Built in Mission Revival style, the station features the usual trademarks of arched windows and doors, Mission-style parapets, and that iconic red tile roof. The building also features an exterior arcade along the rear of the structure, and thus ticks all the boxes for that classic Mission Revival style. Before we head over to the platforms, we first need to head north, where just across the parking lot we find the Homewood Railroad Park. The Railroad Park is home to 2 pieces of Illinois Central rolling stock. Up front is EMD GP10 number 8408, one of Illinois Central's road switcher locomotives. This locomotive started out life as a GP9, numbered 9181, but was rebuilt up to GP10 spec. Behind the GP10 is caboose number 9426. The caboose proudly displays the Illinois Central logo, name, and slogan of Mainline of Mid-America along the side. Our departure time is fast approaching, so we'll bid farewell to the railroad park and make our way back over to the station. As I mentioned in our ride out here, for whatever reason, the station building was and remains closed, despite us being here well within their operational hours. Taking a look at some pictures online, it doesn't look like we're missing out on much, as the facilities are really just a small waiting room, ticketing desk, and some vending machines. Speaking of, if you missed our ride down here on Amtrak's Highliner, feel free to check it out. Links will be in the top right or in the description below. Just behind the station building are the tunnels out to the platforms. The ramp and associated structure are quite recent additions, with both added in the 2020 renovations. Heading downstairs, we find the complete opposite of the brand new ramps, the super sketchy tunnels. There's water and rust stains everywhere, and there appears to be an extension cable tied to the ceiling for auxiliary power to something behind the stairwell up to platform 1. Plus, the paint is falling off in sheets, leaving patches of bare concrete all over the walls. Fortunately though, the platform itself is much nicer than the tunnels. The platform follows the same Mission Revival architectural style, with textured walls, arched windows on the waiting shelters, and that classic red-tiled roof that can be seen from the parking lot. Platform 1 here is reserved for Metra services, but across the tracks is the Amtrak platform, which serves the 3 long-distance and intercity routes in and out of Chicago. Looking up, we find the overhead catenary wires, a rare sight for any line outside of the Northeast Corridor. If you're at all familiar with Metra, then you'll know that running anything outside of a diesel locomotive is very uncharacteristic. Metra wouldn't dream of running anything off of overhead or third rail power if they didn't have to, which begs the question, why does Metra even have an electric line? The simple answer is that they didn't build it. In the late 1910s and early 1920s, the Illinois Central partnered with the Chicago government to construct a berm which would eliminate grade crossings on the route between South Homewood and Chicago. This was followed by the electrification of the line in 1926, which opened in 1927. In that first year of service, the 3 electrified lines carried a total of 26 million passengers and peaked at 47 million in 1946. The Illinois Central continued operating the electrified corridor for many decades, contracting with Chicago's Regional Transportation Authority in 1976 to fund their commuter service. In 1987, Metra purchased the lines outright and have continued operating this strange line ever since. A pair of headlights appear on the horizon as the southbound train makes its way down the tracks for its stop in Homewood. This train, a set of 3 Highliner 2 EMUs, will become ours after it reaches the end of the line at University Park and begins the return journey back to Chicago. While we waited for our train to return, freight movements began on the Canadian National Mainline. First up was an Illinois Central Manifest train, followed by an engines light move of 2 CN EMD locomotives. On the front of this move was CN 3128, an EMD ET44AC. On the rear was CN 3983, an EMD ES44AC. A familiar bell can be heard in the distance, and looking down the tracks, we find our train pulling back into Homewood. As it comes to a stop, we can head over to the nearest doors and climb aboard. I immediately made my way towards the front of the train, because these EMUs have an awesome feature that not many others have: a clear view of the tracks ahead. Unlike their predecessor Highliner 1s, these Highliner 2s are adaptations of the gallery cars used on the rest of Metra's fleet. The EMUs use virtually identical car bodies, but have been outfitted with pantographs for overhead power and DC motors on each axle. Because they have the same car body as gallery cars, and thus the same high cab position, the end doors have an entirely unobstructed view out of the front and rear of the train. As we pull away from Homewood, let's take a quick look at our route back to Chicago. Our journey begins heading northeast past CN's Chicago Intermodal Terminal, passing through Harvey and Riverdale before crossing the Little Calumet River. Continuing on, we meet up with the Blue Island branch and South Shoreline tracks ahead of our stop in Kensington. The tracks of the South Chicago branch connect with the main line past 75th Street, with our train following the curve around Hyde Park and up the coast. Our train briefly dips underground for a stop at McCormick Place before pulling into Millennium Station in downtown Chicago. We'll cover a total of just over 23 miles between Homewood and Chicago, with a travel time of 55 minutes. We're barely out of Homewood before our train slows down for the first stop in Calumet. As our train pauses to pick up a few passengers, we can check out the seating on board. Seating on Metra's electric trains is identical to the rest of Metra's fleet. Starting out with our seats in a group of 4, there's only around 2 inches between my knees and the next seat. This tiny gap means that no 2 adults could really sit across from one another. The seatbacks can be flipped around, however, which makes it easier to configure the train in either direction of travel. In its single-row configuration, these seats offer around 4 to 5 inches between my knees and the next seat. This is more than enough legroom to be comfortable, plus there's a bit of space beneath the next seat to stretch out. Sticking to that electric theme, each row also features a wall outlet, an amenity not offered on Metra's regular coaches. Moving our attention from seat back to ceiling, we can spot the cutout and 2 galleries on either side of the train. The luggage rack for downstairs passengers is also located in this cutout, although be wary about storing belongings up there, as they're easily accessible to passengers sitting on the upper level. Because the station building at Homewood was closed, I was unable to purchase a ticket ahead of our departure. I was able to purchase one easily from the onboard staff, which leaves me with a nice memento from today's travels. Now, I wasn't going to give up the opportunity to get some great footage of that ride ahead, so I set up my GoPro on the front window for a bit. The main line here is an impressive sight. Aside from our 2 commuter tracks, there are an additional 5 off to the right, serving Canadian National Freight and Amtrak intercity services. Unfortunately, the crew weren't too keen on my camera being up on the front window, and they asked that I take it down a few minutes after leaving Harvey. Just before that though, our front-facing camera catches a clear shot of the old 147th Street platform. Metra is currently working to retrofit many of its older stations, including 147th Street. Construction of the new station is ongoing and is set to open sometime later this year. The Little Calumet River is our next landmark, with our 7 tracks splitting across 4 individual bridges, meeting back up on the other bank. The bridges of South Indiana Avenue and Union Pacific's Villa Grove subdivision can be seen in the background. The electric tracks doubled from 2 to 4 as the South Shoreline and Blue Island branch merged with the main line into Chicago. While we make our way up the electric corridor, let's take a look at some stats about our train. Our train today is Metra Electric number 826 and is powered by 3 Nippon Sharyo Highliner 2 EMUs. Each Highliner 2 is powered by GE's 1258 DC traction motors, producing 150 horsepower each. With 4 motors per car across each EMU, Highliner 2s can produce a total of 1,200 continuous horsepower. The motors can also boost up to 160 for a short period of time, bringing total output up to 1,280 horsepower. Highliner 2s are rated for a top speed of 80 miles an hour, but track speeds limit trains to a top speed of 65. Metra's electric district covers a total of 31.5 miles across 3 branches. The electric district includes 49 stations, with 19 between Chicago and the terminus of the South Chicago branch, 29 to the terminus in Blue Island, and 34 down the main line to University Park. The district operates a colossal 127 trains on weekdays and averaged 28,100 weekday riders between 2018 and 2019. The gaps in between stations may be relatively short, but our EMUs still reach the maximum operating speed of 65 miles per hour. Each Highliner EMU includes 1 bathroom, however our lead car doesn't have one. Passing into the next car, we find the accessible bathroom directly in the center. The bathroom really doesn't have much going on, with Metra opting for function over form. Where there should be a sink is, well, nothing, instead replaced by a hand sanitizer dispenser. There are still paper towels, with 1 roll of toilet paper that's running low. The facility is at least decently clean, which is really the only good thing I can say about it. It's definitely a bathroom for sure, but not one I'd spend too much time in. After making a quick stop at McCormick Place, we emerge back into the sunlight, with the Chicago skyline towering over the tracks ahead. Our train makes 2 final stops at Museum Campus and Van Buren Street, the skyscrapers growing ever taller as we approach. Departing Van Buren Street, we get the only look at one of South Shoreline's trains, a set of Nippon Sharyo single-level EMUs. Crossing back into darkness, the tracks begin their run beneath Millennium Park. Our train navigates the many switches and diamond crossings, guiding us into our final destination. Our train comes to a stop and we can disembark into Chicago. Making our way up the platform, we reach the pedestrian ramps to the station concourse, although the sign just above the ramp entrance says we're headed to Randolph Street Station. Randolph Street Station was the previous name for Millennium Station, before it was rebuilt below ground to accommodate Millennium Park. The station was renamed to Millennium during the renovations, but many longtime Chicago residents may still refer to the station by its original Randolph Street name. Millennium Station feels like a smaller version of the old Penn Station in New York City with its low ceilings and strange rounded walls. In the center of the main concourse is a small waiting area for passengers with the outer walls lined with shops. As we make our way through Millennium Station, we can bring today's video to a close. Next week, we'll be back in the Netherlands to ride on an NS International service in first class from Amersfoort to Hengelo. If you're new around here, then why not hit that subscribe button? It's totally free and it really helps support the channel. There's a lot more incredible content on the way, so stick around if you want to see more. As always, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my patrons and channel members. If you too want your name in the video or just want to support the channel in more ways than one, then head on over to the links in the description below. But anyways, that's all I have for today. Thanks for riding with me, and I'll see you in the next one.